I've been working the night shift at the hospital for a few years now. It's usually quiet, almost too quiet. The halls are dimly lit, and the only sounds are the beeps of monitors and the occasional whisper of nurses. But last night, something happened that I can't shake off. Something that has me questioning my sanity. It started like any other night. I was assigned to the ICU where the sickest patients are kept. It was a small unit, just 6 rooms, all in a row. By 2 a.m., most of the patients were asleep, and I was doing my rounds, checking vitals and making sure everything was in order. That's when I first noticed him. He was standing at the end of the hallway, near the exit. At first, I thought he was a visitor who had gotten lost, but visiting hours were long over, and he wasn't wearing a visitor's badge. He was just standing there, staring at me. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. I felt the chill run down my spine, but I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just some guy who wandered in from the street. It happens sometimes. I continued my rounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Around 3 a.m., I was in one of the patients' rooms, adjusting an IV drip, when I heard a noise outside. It was faint, like a soft scraping sound. I opened the door and peered down the hallway. It was empty. The sound stopped. I stepped out, looked around, but there was no one there. Just the flickering fluorescent lights and the hum of the air conditioning. As I turned to go back into the room, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow, moving quickly across the wall. I spun around, but again, there was nothing there. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the sweat on my forehead. Something wasn't right. I decided to check the security cameras. We have a small office near the nurses' station with monitors that show different parts of the hospital. As I reviewed the footage, my hand started to shake. There he was, the man from earlier, standing in the hallway, staring directly into the camera. His face was pale, his eyes dark and hollow. He stood there for a few minutes, then moved out of frame. I fast-forwarded the footage, trying to see where he went, but it was like he vanished into thin air. I reported it to security, but they didn't take it seriously. They did a quick sweep of the area and found nothing. Probably just some homeless guy looking for a place to stay, they said. But I knew it was more than that. There was something off about him. Something sinister. By 4 a.m., I was a nervous wreck. I kept seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye, hearing faint whispers that I couldn't quite make out. I was in the break room, trying to calm myself down with a cup of coffee, when the power went out. The room was plunged into darkness, and I heard that scraping sound again, closer this time. I fumbled for my cell phone flashlight, my hands trembling. When I finally got it on, I saw him standing in the doorway, just a few feet away. His face was twisted into a grotesque smile, his eyes boring into mine. I screamed and backed away, but he didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in fear. When the lights came back on, he was gone. I reported it again, but no one believed me. They said it was just my imagination, that I was overworked and stressed. But I know what I saw. I know he's out there, watching and waiting. And I have to go back tonight, back to those dark, silent halls where he's lurking. I don't know what he wants, but I'm terrified to find out. As I sit here writing this, the sun is setting. My shift starts in an hour. I can't shake the feeling that tonight, something terrible is going to happen. I guess you could say I'm used to the creepy stuff. You have to be when you work the night shift at an old hospital like Providence Medical. But man, there was this one night that still gives me chills every time I think about it. It was around midnight, and the hospital was dead quiet, except for the occasional beeping of the heart monitors and the distant sound of the ambulance bay. I was stationed at the nurse's desk on the 4th floor. That's the old section of the hospital that they were planning to renovate but never got around to. The lights were always flickering and half the rooms were empty, which just added to the creepy vibe. I was sipping my third cup of coffee trying to stay awake when the phone rang. It was the front desk saying that there was a call for me on line 2, which was odd because who would call me here in the middle of the night? I picked up. Hello? The line was filled with static at first. Then I heard a whisper. Help me, please. The voice was so faint, I thought I was hearing things. Who is this? I asked. More static, and then the line went dead. I shook it off as a prank, but then the call came again. The same whisper, the same plea. I traced the call. It was coming from inside the hospital, from one of the old patient rooms on my floor. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, my heart pounding as I made my way down the dimly lit corridor. The air felt colder as I approached the room where the call had come from. The door creaked loudly as I pushed it open, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The room was empty, the bed neatly made, no sign of anyone having been there for years. I was about to leave when I heard a soft sobbing sound coming from the bathroom. As I slowly approached the bathroom door, the sobbing grew louder, more desperate. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there? You don't need to be afraid." No response, just sobs. I pushed the door open and nothing. The room was completely empty. No one was there. The sobbing stopped. I felt a chill run down my back as I stood there, trying to make sense of it all. I hurried back to the nurse's desk, trying to calm my nerves. I sat down, my hands still shaking, when the phone rang again. It was the front desk. "Hey, just checking in. That call earlier, line 2, it's disconnected. Been out for weeks. Not sure how you got a call on that line." I couldn't even respond. My mind was racing. Disconnected? Then how? Just then, the lights flickered more violently and the hospital plunged into darkness. The emergency lights kicked in, casting eerie shadows along the walls. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps coming down the hallway towards me. I ducked under the desk, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped right in front of the nurse's desk. I could hear a raspy breathing just above me. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that they'd go away. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps continued, fading away down the corridor. When the lights came back, I bolted out of there, ran all the way to the security office. I told them everything. They checked the cameras, but all they saw was me, running down the hallway, alone. They said it was probably just my imagination, working too many night shifts. But I know what I heard. I know what I felt. And I never volunteered for the night shift at Providence Medical again. I never believed in ghosts, at least not until that night. It was my turn on the night shift at the hospital. I've done it dozens of times before. It's quiet, almost peaceful, but that night was different. The air felt heavier, colder. The light seemed dimmer. I shrugged it off as my imagination and got ready for my rounds. It was around 1:30 a.m. when it started. I was walking down the long, empty hallway on the 3rd floor, the floor that everyone said was haunted. I always dismissed it as hospital gossip. I always laughed it off, but as I walked, I heard a faint humming. It was soft, like a lullaby. I stopped and listened. The sound echoed through the hall, coming from an old storage room. I knew no one was supposed to be there. The room was used for old equipment and it was always locked. I hesitated but felt a strange pull to check it out. As I approached, the humming stopped. I reached for the doorknob, expecting it to be locked, but it turned easily in my hand. Inside the room was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb in the corner. The old hospital beds and wheelchairs cast long, eerie shadows on the walls. I scanned the room, but it was empty. Just as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Then, the humming started again, louder this time, coming from right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. A cold breeze brushed past me, and I felt a presence. I couldn't see it, but I knew I wasn't alone. The humming grew louder, almost deafening, and I could feel something cold wrapping around my neck. I gasped for breath, my vision blurring. In the dim light, I saw a figure, a woman in an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, her face pale and eyes dark. She whispered something I couldn't understand, but the words gave me chills up and down my body. I struggled to free myself, but the cold grip tightened. Just as I felt myself slipping away, the door flew open and the grip released. I stumbled out, gasping for air, and the door slammed shut behind me. I ran down the hall, not daring to look back. When I reached the nurse's station, my colleagues saw the terror in my eyes. I tried to explain, but all I could say was, "The storage room, it's haunted." They looked at me with a mix of concern and disbelief. We went back to the storage room together, but it was empty. The door was locked, just as it should be. They told me it was just my imagination, the result of a long night and too little sleep. I know I'm not crazy. It was too real to not be real. I know I didn't imagine what happened, but I have no way of explaining it. The humming, the cold grip, the figure in the nurse's uniform, it was real. I never took the night shift again, and every time I pass that storage room, I get the creepiest feeling ever, reminding me that some things in this world are beyond explanation. I've tried to move on, to forget that night, but the memory lingers, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows. So if you ever find yourself working a night shift in a hospital and you hear a faint humming, beware. You might not be as alone as you think.